All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I am, my goodness, folks, please be seated. I am so gratified, overwhelmed, and indeed humbled by your recorded applause on a Thursday. Albert is here, my friends.
Thank you.
A lot of people write in going, is Albert here or not? And the answer is, he is. Others write in and go, is Kim here or not? And she is.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah, she's got a child in Europe. She's got another who's like a martial arts expert. He kicks ass while he plays the, what is that thing? The bagpipes. It's amazing to see. And I hope that some local media picks up a little bit of that, because it's pretty cool to watch Jacob. I mean, literally, have you seen him with the roundhouse kick while he's playing the bagpipes? It's
I don't think he plays the bagpipe. That's a new one. But yeah,
well, you
sure.
know what? He's a closet bagpiper, and he doesn't want to admit to his folks that he's so into bagpipes. And it's a shame that you have to find out about it this way.
Yeah.
But the reality is he's a macho kick-asser who plays the bagpipes, and he has his own place in the sun there in Petaluma, California. I'm excited about today. Let's get it on. We've got David Katz in hour 2. There's a lot going on, some breaking news of the moment that is in the legal department. Kim, you have the breaking news in the legal department. It's regarding the birth citizenship.
Yeah, there's a judge that has paused the birthright citizenship order that Trump issued. This is a federal judge in New Hampshire that is now stopping Trump's birthright citizenship order from taking effect anywhere in the United States. The judge, and this is, I know, is controversial for everyone, issued a preliminary injunction. These injunctions have been at question. And he may be certifying a class action lawsuit brought by people who are having kids in America and who aren't citizens. So they want to settle this issue. So
right, and for those who just woke up to this birthright citizenship thing, it is Donald Trump's executive order essentially rolling back a birthright citizenship. And his administration is saying that, if you're born in this country, usually citizenship is conferred to you, but in this case, now it's a new day dawning on America, and that will no longer be the case. The judge is saying, wait, it still is the case, and there's a stay, essentially, right? That's what you're saying, or an injunction, a stoppage. Right. And is it a 7-day stoppage? I just glanced at the story. It literally just moved, but I don't know. I thought there was a preliminary injunction and certifying the class action lawsuit. There's going to be a ton of, there'll be a ton of those who are included in that class action, right?
Yeah.
And a ton of different classes, I would think. But,
you're right about the 7 days, and that's why they think this could fast track this case to the Supreme Court. So they'll have to rule on the injunction case and whether this case complies with their injunction ruling previously and the birthright citizenship case. So former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney David Katz is coming on the show in a little under an hour, and we'll make sure that we ask him about this.
Excellent. Exactly. Very well put. Albert, could you put things as well as your sister once in a while? It'll be nice. She did a very nice job with that. And
Kim is setting the bar too high. Yeah, I don't know if I can reach that one.
Apologies. I'll lower it.
I want to also give you some other breaking news. This is pretty big, too. It has to do with the attack on Iran and the latest intelligence information out of Israel suggests that some of Iran's enriched uranium survived the attacks.
What?
This assessment comes as experts are trying to determine how long it would take to rebuild the nuclear program in Iran in the aftermath of the U.S. and Israeli strikes, of course. So the Israeli information that the underground stockpile of near bomb-grade enriched uranium survived that huge attack, series of attacks from Israel, the huge attack from America. This is big news. senior Israeli official, also saying that Israel had begun moving toward military action against Iran late last year after seeing what the official describes as a race to build a bomb as part of the secret Iranian project. But again, the more pertinent information is the associated intel that a lot of that enriched uranium may have survived the attack. That was, of course, very much in keeping with what we knew was a possibility, because we knew that there was no way you could proclaim after the bombing, mission accomplished, their entire program is obliterated. But we know that that was the victory lap that the president of the United States was taking. It just, again, it's not even that he could be wrong. He could be right. But we knew that he was neither right nor wrong in that moment, because the dust hadn't even settled yet. You can't say that, oh, we did it, we obliterated him. The details had to follow. And then the other breaking news I have for you, I have even a third piece of breaking news.
What?
You're full of the breaking news today.
I'm full of so much. Trump's Hooters-loving Malaysian ambassador pick is causing concern among allies in Asia. He's an alpha male MAGA pundit.
What?
Yet another one of these guys who finds his way to public policy and to public service via being a loudmouth MAGA person. He declares love of rare steaks. He once called Taylor Swift a woke Jezebel, and he is now going to be ambassador to Malaysia.
That's nice.
Asia, they're not crazy for like that whole thing where you come in and whip it out, take off your shirt, show everybody what a man you are, that toxic masculinity. That doesn't go over so well in Asia. He's 40 years old. Nick Adams is the next U.S. ambassador to Malaysia. At least that's the nomination. And as I say, he's said stuff like this, quote, I go to Hooters. I eat rare steaks. I lift extremely heavy weights. I read the Bible every night. I am pursued by copious amounts of women. I am wildly successful. I have the physique of a Greek god. I have an IQ over 180. I'm extremely charismatic. They hate this. I wonder how much of that is parody or how much of that is deliberately over the top sarcasm. But he...
Did you really just do that?
Yeah, he definitely leads with some rhetoric that, they might...
He's icky.
Yeah. So anyway, ickiness is the new America in some ways. And so he is President Trump's latest nominee, the nominee for Malaysian ambassador. It is a terrific day when we can point to something awkward in the White House. And so it was yesterday that the President of the United States was meeting with African countries. Now, first of all, let me just say, this is not pure sport, talking about the African countries, Trump getting together with them. You understand that on the continent of Africa, there are rich mineral resources that America wants, right? We want access to these mineral resources. In fact, the mineral resources on the continent of Africa have always been the inducement to plunder this continent. Think about how much colonialization has gone on in Africa. I mean, the Danes were there, the Americans are there in more subtle ways, the British were there in a heavy-handed way, the French were there. I mean, the colonization of Africa, the Dutch were there. The colonization of Africa is something that has a legacy, and one of the legacies is the language spoken. And so it's in the atmosphere of wanting things from some of these smaller countries in Africa that don't have trade deals yet with China, et cetera. There's an opportunity there for America to have a relationship there based on some kind of interest that America has in those precious minerals. So this was the conversation with the Liberian president, who was quite gracious, and by now most are aware of the way that Trump sort of stepped in it. I would say also the way the Liberian president graciously kind of just continued and didn't draw attention to it. Go ahead, Albert.
Mr. President, we thank you for this opportunity to be here. Liberia is a longtime friend of the United States, and we believe in your policy of making America great again. And we also go a long way with you with your diplomacy that has to do with economic development and commercial friendship. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well.
Very
And
good,
they,
sir.
Oh, awkward.
Well, English is the official language of Liberia, so there is that. Now,
Question though,
yeah.
shouldn't his staff prepare him for that? Like, shouldn't his staff know that he doesn't know things? And so, they'll just kind of prep him that, that he speaks great English and he's, it's his native language because he grew up speaking it. It just feels like they should know where the holes, gaps in his knowledge are and fill it in before he gets to the table.
I will say two things about that. First of all, of course, you're right on one level. On another level, if you know the guy you're working for, in this case, the President of the United States, doesn't read any briefing materials and doesn't pay anything of a lick of attention to anything that you're going to tell him, then it's sort of probably wasted breath. I don't know that there's any kind of briefing that Donald Trump is particularly paying attention to. He feels very strongly about these face-to-face meetings, going with his gut, and he feels as though he is more knowledgeable in ways that matter than anybody else in the room or anybody who can brief him on anything. I'm sure it's born of insecurity or something, but it comes across, and I think it is arrogance, such that you just can't get through to that. But of course, you're right. Normally, you would brief a chief executive on this sort of thing. Now, I don't know that it wouldn't be a complete dossier which is associated with those things that I was talking about, those things that you want from that Liberian president. But those things have nothing to do with the language spoken there. They have to do with, again, those precious minerals and the deals that we possibly make. And plus, it wasn't just the Liberian president. It was others who are on the continent of Africa, again, where there's a commercial interest, a business interest on the part of the Americans. So it lost in all of that, I guess I would say, in those briefing materials, Kim, might be the language spoken. In other words, it's not like you're just saying, by the way, dude, remember, he speaks English. It just is one of those things where it may not be in the playbook on page 1. So, and since he's not looking at the playbook anyway, it doesn't matter what page it's on. Now, I'm going to say this, and you're going to be a bit miffed with me, because I know our population of viewers and listeners, you're not big MAGA fans, and you're not big fans of Donald Trump. I try to be calling balls and strikes. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I think he's a mess. I think he's the mad king, and I think he's created a hateful, dangerous, and illegal environment in America right now. But let me speak on his behalf for a moment. If I asked you ahead of this whole thing to tell me what the official language of Liberia is, could you tell me?
I couldn't, but if I'm going to a meeting like this with the leader of that country, I'm hoping to be the most prepared person at the table. And that's what I'm hoping our president is. I realize it's not happening with this guy, but I want the United States to be the most prepared people in the room. And clearly, no one did any research or looked into anything. So if I'm meeting with the country, you better believe I'll know it.
I think that's probably true. You would prep it. You'd work through the night. You'd get all the information. And that's why you'll never be president.
I guess not, no.
You need other stuff, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
Preparation is not the big thing. So it was, of course, one of those situations in which all of these people are coming to the White House. They know that by ingratiating themselves to the president, they have a better chance of making a positive deal. And that way,
They are kissing my ass.
exactly. And he knows that too. So when you know that you're pretty much the prettiest girl at the dance, you don't need to worry about what dress you're wearing. Yeah. I do take an interest, though, on the continent of Africa. Of all the countries on the continent of Africa, how many countries are there, Albert? Can you Google how many countries there are in Africa? Because there are a lot. It's a big continent, and it has many, many countries. How many countries are on the continent of Africa? Do you know, Albert? You can just Google it quickly.
Google it.
Yeah. And then I have a follow-up question.
I do have the number.
Yes, sir.
54.
54. All right. So 54 countries on the continent of Africa. And of the 54 countries, English is the official language of how many? How many countries out of the 54 countries on the continent of Africa have English as their official language? Think about it. I'm telling you, this is a little harder than you think.
Well, we know South Africa does, right?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Liberia.
Okay, that's true.
I know there's a lot of French-speaking countries.
That's true. The Ivory Coast, the Côte d'Ivoire, as they call it. And that's because, of course, French colonization. Who else was there? The Dutch, as I mentioned.
The Dutch were there, yeah.
Yeah, the British in a big way. That's why there are so many that have English as the official language. I'm seeing some guesses. 50, says D. Elliott. 16, Citizen Morgan. How many?
I'll go with Citizen Morgan. 16 sounds about right.
All right, it does, doesn't it?
23 is good, Calvin.
English in the official language. Yeah, thanks for looking it up, Calvin. 23 is the
it?
answer. Please, give me a break.
Yeah.
23, yeah. So, again, these are British colonies, former British colonies, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, South Africa. But it's interesting that now there are, I'm going to say, north of 2,000 languages spoken on the continent of Africa. There are all sorts of languages spoken there, but in terms of official languages, that's it. This is an interesting question. What country has 37 official languages? What country has 37 official languages?
In Africa?
It is not in Africa. I will give you that clue. Yeah. 37 official languages, not in Africa. That's a good guess. The Philippines is a good guess. Not right, but thank you, Trevor Starr.
We have a bunch of languages over there.
USA, a few people say. I won't belabor it. I'll just tell you, Bolivia is the
Delat.
Yeah.
Wow, Delat.
Yeah. The first of two countries. Bolivia has 37 official languages, and Peru has 32 official langues.
Why is that? Are they tribal languages, or is it like a melting pot like America is?
This is a very good question. I think it has to do with the officialdom that's associated with languages, like what is our official language, and a desire to incorporate all of the different languages that don't reflect colonization. So maybe, they go back to indigenous languages and then so on. But, how you get to 32, I don't know. But that would be, again, old dialects from Indians, exactly. I mean, that's from meaning the indigenous people there. Yes, says Champagne Wishes. I think that indigenous languages, Deborah. So I think it's based on that and the policy of inclusion. But
again, 2009, I think their constitution wanted to protect the indigenous languages.
Yeah, there it is. All right, very, very well done. Well, we've learned a lot about each other, everyone. So go out and make it a great day, or un buen dia, as we say.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, but that was the deal on Trump and the Liberian leader's English. Meantime, the news grim out of Florida, 120 now dead. I don't know if that's like it's a sad kind of tote board of horror you have to look at to see what the latest death toll is in Florida. These Texas floods having stolen the lives of so many, those sweet souls who were there at that camp. I was reading a moving description of how two Mexican workers, helpers, were rounding up the girls at the camp to get them to higher ground, to evacuate them, and had them singing songs and had them try. It was even as I try to describe it to you, I feel like I could break down. So all I'll say is I loved it for bringing to light the way in which everybody worked together to try to avoid the loss of life. And of course, at this time where we find Mexican Americans and those of Latino heritage so pressured in our society, I also enjoyed the fact that that was the ethnicity of those involved in helping these girls. In any case, the word on the floods is all bad, right, Kim? I mean, there's just it's still a recovery process, is it not?
It's turning, well, they were searching for survivors, and now it switched to mostly recovery efforts. So,
Yeah.
And there's still dozens of people missing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that there are still 173 people missing.
Yeah.
So this is an extraordinary event with the Guadalupe River having overflown its banks, and they're going to have to make some serious decisions down there because this is outrageous that this happened. It really is.
The disaster response from the federal government did not help in this situation.
If you're talking about the response from FEMA,
Mm-hmm.
and FEMA is under the Department of Homeland Security, which is why Kristi Noem is a big part of things, you're 100% right. The FEMA response, preparing to deploy search and rescue teams, life-saving resources, it was immediately halted because of obstacles brought by Kristi Noem. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, whose department oversees FEMA, recently enacted a sweeping rule aimed at cutting spending. Every contract and grant over $100,000 now requires her personal sign-off before any funds can be released. So for FEMA, where disaster response costs routinely soar into the billions, that's as they have on-the-ground crews, and they have contracts with them, and they have systems in place, essentially, that go into place quickly. That threshold of $100,000 is ridiculous. It's so low. It's nothing. It's pennies. So the order to have all of these expenditures go over her desk has slowed response enormously. We were operating under a clear set of guidance. Lean forward, be prepared, anticipate what the state needs, and be ready to deliver it, a longtime FEMA official said. That is not as clear of an intent for this agency at the moment. They couldn't pre-position urban search and rescue crews from a network of teams stationed regionally across the country because that had to be okayed by Kristi Noem because it would cost more than $100,000.
So they can't stage in the flooding area, right, where they need to be close to the action. The flooding happened on July 4th, if I'm correct. So that was a Friday. They were not able to set up to help rescue people until Monday. So we're talking, 3 days, 3.5 days until the rescuers were able to be at the scene? Seriously, this is when you need help from the federal government. This is why we have a federal government, because they come in and they help us when we need it. They're useless. This is what happens when you put the idiots in charge.
I think that this is true. I mean, Kim has stated it sort of bluntly, but as you know, I think Kristi Noem is all show and no go. She's busy shooting some commercial with a bunch of gang members behind her or detainees in some place in El Salvador. She's busy making huge media buys on radio and television, talking about the fact that you should self-deport because we're coming to get you. She's busy with that. She's busy with the cosplay of wearing the hat and wearing the uniforms or the whatever is most favorably casting her in an official light. She's busy doing something, but she's not handling the agency in any kind of competent way. Kim can call it idiocy. I think that's not wrong. I mean, I think, as I've said to you before, I think she's a vacuous person with nothing more to say except flattery toward Donald Trump. And that's been enough to get her by. But when these people who have no real competence and are in charge of so much, DHS, and I've been screaming about this since the creation of this ridiculous Homeland Security. I hate even the word Homeland. It just reminds me of World War II, Deutschland.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the idea that this massive agency could grow even more massively, and now in the new budget, it is the big beneficiary of this new bill. In addition to the billionaires, when it comes to government, chalk one up for Kristi Noem and the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. So we'll get to more of the specifics on that either later today or another time. But when we're talking about the handling of this tragedy, you have a big lumbering agency that has plenty of money that they're talking about defusing. That is to say, the FEMA part of Department of Homeland Security, they don't see the upside to that. They see it as a big bloated agency that needs to be either taken down or completely made skinny. Well, the reality is, with more and more of these climate disasters, you actually need to look at that agency as perhaps, as Kim says, one of the more important things that government does. So Texas requested aerial imagery from FEMA to aid search and rescue operations, but that was delayed because Noem needed to approve that contract. FEMA staff have also been answering phones at a disaster call center where, according to one agency officials, callers have faced longer wait times as the agency waited for Noem's approval for a contract to bring on more support staff. The chaos has exposed a deeper uncertainty within FEMA about its ability to respond, about its essential mission. Just as hurricane and wildfire seasons have gotten underway, officials with FEMA are saying if the disaster had spanned a larger area, multiple states, the confusion, the delays, this edict where stuff has to follow through her desk onto wherever it needs to be, it would have been a much more severe situation in terms of FEMA's ability to help. So, look, this is not a new warning. This has been a warning that we've been hearing for months. And we've got hurricane season, fire season, as noted. So DHS better get its act together on FEMA. And if I were them, is that the way you say it? If I were them, I would, I'd reconsider what you're doing with FEMA, what your plans are. And by the way, there are rumblings within the administration that may happen. So, they cut a lot and then they rehire and maybe they refund. We'll see. New Mexico flooding affecting more brown people than white, thus no media, says Murphy Rowan. Yeah, I mean, the flash flooding in the desert Southwest is a real threat, a real threat.
I don't know if you saw the video, but speaking of Murphy's comment there is dramatic footage of an entire house swept away and floating down the river. It's
I did
really
see it, and the remarks of the people shooting it are pretty wild. Do you have that video, Albert? I don't know if
the craziest video, and it's so surprising. So I think that part did get some coverage, but you don't see footage really of the people standing on the banks and who's affected in this case. And I think that there were so many children at summer camp involved in the Texas incident and the staggering loss of life. Maybe
this is
why
in
the focus is there.
New Mexico. Yeah, that's what Kim's talking about. This is for those just listening. You're seeing a river along the banks of the river, and now you're just seeing homes picked up and shoved down the river.
It's crazy.
see the effects of these flash floods. It's wild, brutal, and this is where you really need government.
Yeah.
You know, it's just too big a job for the local, state, and community resources to possibly be enough. So, but again, the National Weather Service cut huge cuts to the National Weather Service and NOAA, but the latest is the Trump administration now perhaps staffing back up. The so-called Department of Government Efficiency slashed jobs earlier this year at NWS, National Weather Service, cutting roughly 600 positions in the name of combating government waste. I mean, this, again, in the name of combating government waste, they cut all of these essential positions. It had nothing to do with waste. There was no evaluation of waste. There was no efficiency expert brought in. These were tech bros that came in there and they cut like a knife through butter. It was brutal what happened there, and it was reckless and it was wanton. Anyway, now President Trump's pick to run the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which oversees National Weather Service, is saying that he'll make staffing the Weather Service's top priority. So he's going to, I guess, try to get past Donald Trump some of these restaffs that they want to do.
So he's going to fill the positions where they just fired people?
I don't know that he'll fill them all, but I think based on his comments, he's going to go for trying to staff up a bit to bolster what are clearly a pretty, it's a pretty thin staffing charge thus far. They laid off or offered buyouts to hundreds of National Weather Service staff. Part of Texas, where floods recently hit, the Austin, San Antonio National Weather Service office was short 6 employees from its standard staffing of 26. And the San Angelo office, which provided alerts to part of Central Texas, also short 4 people from its standard staffing. So, as we mentioned, the critical person who is in charge of getting the word out, the liaison to media, between forecasters and media, you need a liaison, a way in which to disseminate the information. That person was fired. That job was eliminated.
So
And
this,
you see
this
the result.
guy's name is Neil Jacobs, and he's Trump's pick for NOAA, as you mentioned. And he said it's really important. He said it during his confirmation hearings. It's really important for the people to be there, as far as like the staff, because they have relationships with the people in the local community. Really, you think? So you fired all the people that did that, and now, head scratcher, you realize you need them.
Yeah.
Come on.
It doesn't track, of course, but speaking of things that don't track but are related to weather, you'll appreciate this. Conspiracy theories about the Texas floods. The disinformation around a, quote, weather weapon. Cloud seeding being widely promoted by everyone is this theory that cloud seeders and a weather weapon gone haywire is the reason for the Texas flooding. Yeah. Due to the recent weather weapon deployed against Texas, which resulted in a high number of child murders, efforts to eliminate this military treason are being escalated, said Michael Meyer, who's the founder of an anti-government extremist group called Veterans on Patrol. Hours after that post, a man broke into an enclosure containing the next-gen live radar system operated by News 9 in Oklahoma City, damaged its power supply, knocked it offline briefly. The man also damaged the cameras monitoring the site. But you could see his face prior to all of this destruction that he wrought. And there have been no arrests made, but they're aware of this Veterans on Patrol group, and they think that this guy may be traced back to that. But this is a wild thing. It doesn't seem as though any story is immune from the conspiracy theories associated with a weather weapon. You heard Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about it in relation to the fires. And even Lee Zeldin, who's the head of the EPA, he's the billionaire in that billionaire boys club, which is the Trump cabinet. He says Americans have questions about geoengineering and contrails. This as Republicans have spread absurd conspiracy theories suggesting that the flash flooding was caused by weather manipulation. He's saying Lee Zeldin, he runs your EPA. With a big nod to conspiracy theories, he says, for years, people who've asked questions in good faith were dismissed, even vilified by the media and their own government. That ends today. Following his post, the EPA announced 2 new web pages that discuss geoengineering and contrails.
It's because they got rid of all the real scientific web pages. They're going to put up the questions, like the conspiracy page.
Good point. There's a lot of room.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a lot of room on the web for this. EPA is committed to total transparency with the American public on these topics, he says.
Oh, my God.
And then last month, Governor Ron DeSantis passing a law that bans geoengineering and weather modification activities, despite the admission, his own admission, that it's not happening in his state. He's banned something that's not even going on. It's, once again, it's the theater of legislation. It's taking care of a problem that doesn't exist. So, again, a lot of this is performative, and it's a nod to conspiracy theorists who are a big part of the MAGA nation.
It just gives legs to the ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. So, speaking of legs to the ridiculous, Albert, what do we have coming up on the big show? I've got Katz coming up at the top of the hour, and we've covered a lot of Texas and even the conspiracy theories are around that. I'd like to, if I could, gosh, I've got some legal stuff. I guess I'll have that for Katz. There's something big happening in Texas, and I'd like to just address it real quickly, but it's really important for the election. And then I've got something on the economy, and I'll shoehorn that in before we get to David Katz. Before I do any of that, please, if you would, smash the like button like a boss. Do it like an adult.
With your iron rod.
Do it for me. Do it for this great nation that as it disintegrates under your feet.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it, damn it. Thanks for all the support. Those of you who have become part of our Patreon and PayPal communities, we post your names at the end of every show. That's the only reason we exist. We couldn't possibly do this on revenues from YouTube. They're just not sufficient. And now we've even been beaten down a bit in terms of where we show up and all of that. And that's happening to a lot of shows that sort of are critical of government at the moment. So in any case, we like to think of ourselves as truth tellers. I mean, and we like to be open to opinions of all sorts and facts that come from different places. And then we make this the clearinghouse for it to whatever extent we can. So appreciate all of your support. And again, we update that list of our supporters from Patreon and PayPal at the end of every month. So hopefully we'll see your name up there. And again, appreciate it. Please subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you'll know whenever there is a new video. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I wanted to mention what's happening in Texas because a lot of attention is paid to the midterms. And the midterms. The Democrats are going to be able to retake the House during the midterms. And while these midterms are when we're going to be able to finally own government, or at least a piece of government that can hold in check this mad king, Donald Trump. Well, before you get too excited about it, and again, this isn't all bad news, but just stuff you should be aware of. They are redrawing the maps in Texas, and they'd already gerrymandered the hell out of Texas. Okay, Texas is a purple state. Texas is not some deep red state at all. But the redrawing of districts there makes it really hard for Democrats to do well, even though they can get the votes. So there are new concerns out of the Democratic Party that the redrawing of the map in Texas could be a way that the Republicans in Texas are going to stave off losses in the midterms. It's a problem that has sort of been ignored or not talked about, but nearly 150 people showed up at a county commissioner's court meeting in northern Texas, and the building was packed because the redrawing of districts is hotly contested. They've initiated a redistricting process that both liberal and conservative voters have criticized. So you can't win on either side. One map, as proposed, would funnel more people of color away from one of the precincts and into another and create an opening for a GOP candidate that has historically underperformed with people of color. Just whatever GOP candidate is there is the point. Because that district now would be siphoned off from many traditionally Democratic voters. So that they're calling racial gerrymandering, but you don't have to call it racial gerrymandering. You can call it just the heavily gerrymandered state of Texas, which we've always talked about. You've heard me talk about Texas on this show and the gerrymandering many times because Texas is always talked about like, oh, wait till we flip Texas, wait till we flip Texas. It's really hard to flip Texas because of this gerrymandering. So all sorts of specifics here, but I'll just share kind of the broad strokes. After this meeting, I should say, dozens of speakers rose, voiced concerns. Several were kicked out. And the map was approved by a 3-2 vote. The Trump administration said it wanted more maps to be redrawn in Texas ahead of the 2026 midterms. That was after this redrawing of this first map. The governor, Greg Abbott, said that a special legislative session will be impaneled for later this month and pick up that cause. It was a heated Senate primary, Trump's slipping approval rating. It would appear that they'll need to redraw maps in Texas in order to hold on to the state. Redistricting, sorry?
It's shifty. It's shifty when you think the only way you can win is if you stack the deck in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, without question. The American system of elections and elections worldwide, but certainly the way we do them here, it is shifty. I mean, it's true. I mean, we like to peacock about, free country and our elections and liberty, and there is a lot great about our elections and liberty and our power of free speech, et cetera. But the elections are not free of voter suppression, this gerrymandering, which is sort of the mainstream politically accepted way to hold on to districts. And it creates an impossible puzzle for the party out of power, and that in Texas is the Democrats. Redistricting gives them the clearest opportunity to increase strength and numbers. Tarrant County in Texas is the last big urban purple county, and Republicans definitely want to plant their flag deeply there. Gerrymandering is the cornerstone of so much, and in Texas, watch for it, because they are continuing to redraw that map. And I wanted to share at least the broad strokes of that with you. I think it will be incredibly relevant as the midterms approach.
The Mark Thompson Show.
50% tariffs is what the president wants on copper and on Brazilian imports. He wants to start it right away. America will once again be a dominant copper industry, Trump said. He's launched this global tariff assault into overdrive because yesterday he said there'll be a 50% tariff on those U.S. copper imports and a 50% duty on goods from Brazil that will all start on August 1st.
What did Brazil do?
Brazil is prosecuting Bolsonaro down there, their former leader. And what are they prosecuting him for? It's going to sound familiar. It was
stealing an election.
Coup attempt and stealing an election.
There
Is
you go.
right. Yeah. And Brazil is the 15th largest U.S. trading partner. Two-way trade of about $92 billion last year. And a rare $7.4 billion U.S. trade surplus, according to the U.S. Census Bureau data. But more to Kim's point, at least about Bolsonaro, it looks as though Trump really is throwing him with Bolsonaro. He says it's a witch hunt, that how could they go after this guy? He's a great leader. And Bolsonaro basically denying the results of the elections there and attempting to engineer a coup. And so because of the prosecution of Bolsonaro, Donald Trump imposing that 50% tariff, again, against Brazil because of the, quote, witch hunt against Bolsonaro.
You would think that, all right, well, I guess we just can't go buy some new copper pots, right? No problem. But apparently, the copper tariff is likely to raise the cost of appliances, electric vehicles, and other goods. So copper is used in a lot of things that maybe we didn't realize.
I was reading a piece yesterday that was pretty detailed about the fact that we can't dodge these tariffs forever. It's going to have a negative influence on the American economy, and we're going to start to notice that pretty quickly. So stay tuned.
Here's the list. Copper is necessary for semiconductors, aircraft, ships, ammunition, data centers, lithium-ion batteries, radar systems, missile defense systems, hypersonic weapons. It's the second most used material by the Department of Defense.
Well, that's fake news, of course, Kim. I don't know where you got that, but
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We can do without it, or we can pay more for it or something.
We don't need it.
It's still unclear. I mean, I really don't know that Donald Trump knows that Brazil doesn't pay that tariff.
Mm-hmm.
That's an import tax. It's a tax.
Yeah.
It's paid by consumers of that product. So you can say, I'm imposing it on Brazilian products because I'm angry about what they're doing in Brazil. But the actual payment is, of course, done by importers, those who are importing the copper. Now, will it have a negative effect on Brazil? In this case, of course. But I don't know that Trump could actually explain it to you. I think he's, I think he's all show and very little go. So there's that. The Secret Service has suspended 6 of their people without pay. It follows the Trump assassination attempt and the investigation into the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, that in which a gunman's bullet grazed Trump's ear, supposedly. The multiple Secret Service officials who were placed on leave for their actions before and after the assassination attempt include the special agent in charge of the Pittsburgh field office, which was tasked with coordinating security with local law enforcement ahead of the rally. And almost immediately after that assassination attempt, lawmakers of both parties were wondering, what the hell happened? I mean, how is a 20-year-old with a gun, it was a long gun, allowed to lie there on a roof in wait for Donald Trump or other public officials?
Especially
and he killed a guy. He killed that guy, Corey Compratore. Yeah, sorry.
Someone saw him climbing the building before he even got up there to lay in wait. It's not like no one saw.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Now, you remember that less than 2 weeks after the whole thing happened, Kimberly Cheadle stepped down as director of the Secret Service. There were bipartisan calls for her resignation. She said she took full responsibility for the security lapse, but I guess that wasn't sufficient. And, that was a comedy of errors. I mean, minus the comedy. It wasn't funny, but it was a screw up on many levels. And so in a way, it doesn't surprise me that there are suspensions, but they suspended 6 people without pay following all of that. The deportation numbers on immigration enforcement, many arrested, not so many yet deported. ICE agents last month arrested the most people in at least 5 years, but deportations are still lagging far behind what President Donald Trump has promised, even behind the Obama administration's numbers. The discrepancy between the arrests and deportations highlights the challenges that the Trump administration faces to make good on Trump's Inauguration Day vow to deport millions and millions of immigrants. According to ICE data, its agents arrested roughly 30,000 immigrants last month, the most since any data was made publicly available. But the number of immigrants deported in June, more than 18,000, amounted to roughly half the number of arrests. Again, that's according to internal figures. The difference between arrests and deportations, similar to the previous month, and the discrepancy can be explained, at least in part, by the number of immigrants being detained who are not immediately eligible for deportation. This is what happens when you're like the gill net fisherman of deportations. You just grab everything in sight in your huge ice net and you pull it on board, and not all of these people are eligible for deportations. That's why they wanted to try to establish, I presume, the policy of putting people on planes right after you arrest them and just shipping them out.
They're even scooping up U.S. citizens in these roundups.
Oh my God, yes. There are a bunch of U.S. citizens being scooped up. So, since February, the Trump administration has averaged 14,700 deportations a month. That's far below the monthly average of 36,000 during the Obama administration. So, again, Obama was called the deporter in chief for a reason. And it looks as though Trump is, as I say, I mean, it's weird because I know that he makes this the cornerstone politically of where he is. He also has funded, as I just mentioned to you a few minutes ago, the ICE part of DHS in a way that it's never been funded before. This is supercharging the secret police force.
Yeah.
And an ICE, I believe, will become a secret police force. It will become our version of the Stasi. It'll become our version of the brown shirts. Look at them now. Faces covered, many not wearing badges, no official uniforms, no official markings on any of these vehicles. It's an outrage. It's an absolute outrage. And if you think it's just going to be limited to Latinos or immigrants who they think may be here illegally, if you really believe that, you are truly naive. Look at how much money, look at how much political capital is being spent, and actual capital, on building this force. And now this force that has no necessity for warrants, has no necessity for identification of any kind, no badges, no numbers, no names, no nothing. As I say, masked the way they are, there is absolutely no way that that force is limited to immigrant communities. It will go after dissidents. It will go after those who they claim are enemies of the state. It'll go after media. This force will be turned with a much broader bent toward many innocent Americans. You heard it here. I've said it for a while, but I'm telling you, you see it in the last budget. It's that line. Don't tell me your priorities, show me your budget, and I'll tell you your priorities. And one of the big priorities of this administration is the ICE units that are taking over the streets of America. Look what's happening in Los Angeles. They already have Marines there. They have ICE raids at an unprecedented level, and they're only going to continue to up those. And you see a presence now of federal troops, either in the form of ICE agents or in the form of U.S. Border Patrol agents or in the form of Marines on the streets of a major American city. It's outrageous. It's uncalled for, but it is setting the table for more. Why won't they do something to stop the Gestapo police? There's really no way to stop them unless Congress steps in. But Congress, of course, is completely, deliberately vacant, right? They've left the building. They are not restraining this president at all. You know, it's interesting, the Tommy Tuberville story, it's in here somewhere. I wanted to comment on Tommy Tuberville, just on that one thing, and then I want to bring on David Katz, and we'll talk about, where is it, Kim? Doggone it. Albert, I blame you for not being able to find it right now. I don't know.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Tommy Tuberville, I can't find the story right now, but I'll just tell you because I've read it and familiar, and you can fill in the blanks, Kim. But Tommy Tuberville is all of a sudden someone who we're looking at and seeing because he's decided not to run for re-election.
Oh, that's why I couldn't find what you're talking about. You mean Mr. Tillis.
Tillis, sorry. Oh, yeah, no wonder. Yeah, Tuberville is he's the guy who was holding up
I'm
yeah.
like, Tuberville, I haven't heard from
Sorry.
him recently.
I've been up all night with that back medicine, so
Oh,
yeah, sorry, I'm not thinking
no.
so clearly. Yeah, Tommy Tillis. And I don't think they call him Tommy. I think he's Tom. But whatever. He's the one who tapped out, said, I'm not going to go on with this anymore. I can't be primaried, and
Right.
politics has turned toxic and all this sort of thing. All right. So now he has come forward and he is saying, this is all crazy. And I'm telling you frankly what's happening in our government. Where's the piece? Is it not in here, or is it?
I highlighted it, but he is now coming out. This is the Senator Tom Tillis, who's a Republican from North Carolina, who's decided not to run again.
He decided not to run again because he was being threatened by being primary. I mean, it was the threats from the administration. Yeah,
that's
either
right.
Get on the train or you will be primaried. We will come after you, essentially. So go ahead.
Now he's free to speak his mind because he doesn't have to worry about appeasing the people, right, that would primary him. He's decided it's okay. So he says the people that are surrounding Trump, he called them a bunch of amateurs. Here's his quote. "I don't have a problem with Trump. I've got a problem with some of the people I consider to be amateurs advising him." He said, "I'm going to make it very clear to them guys, when you act like the president, when he's out of the room, you don't impress me." And they're going to hear more about that in the coming months. Yeah.
This is great. Again, I can't find the piece. I'm glad Kim has it. But I will say this, that the notion that you need to step out of politics in order to speak frankly as a U.S. senator, that's crazy to me. This guy is a U.S. senator from North Carolina. He's a really powerful guy. You understand the power that comes with being a U.S. senator? And you're so cowed by the fear that's associated with the Trump administration. Your associated fear can include violence. You know, Mitt Romney talked about that. Mitt Romney, in his biography, spoke about the fact that he was worried about the safety of himself and his family. And he said, and that this is a shared concern. Lisa Murkowski talked about that. She's another U.S. senator. And one way or another, they have cowed all of these senators. They have built either political fear into them that they're going to be primaried, or physical fear into them, or a mix of both.
Yeah.
And so what Tillis is doing, because he's tapped out, he's saying, you know, I'm retiring now. He's calling out the administration. So to his credit, he's calling out the amateurish, ridiculous, vacuous, vapid nature of all of these people around Trump. You know, everyone from Pete Hegseth to Kristi Noem. And the sad part is that he had to retire from the Senate in order to feel the freedom to do it.
Yeah.
It's pathetic. It's awful. And it's a sign of where we are in America right now. So that Tillis speaks out, great. But that it takes him tapping out of the U.S. Senate to do it, I think it's a sad, sad comment.
On the other hand, it'll be kind of interesting to see what Tillis has to say in the coming months, because he no longer has to keep quiet. So it's going to be delicious.
Yeah. I think he will be creating some copy that will get in the way of everything running so smoothly. Alligator Alcatraz detainees talk about inhumane condition like rats in an experiment, said one. This is a makeshift migrant detention center. You know, they built it on the emigrant. It took 8 days to build it. So, you know, it's not exactly something that they worked all the kinks out of. The facility opened. Multiple outlets have reported on harsh conditions, of course. Spoiled food, mosquitoes, other bugs in the cells.
Ew.
Lights that stay on for 24 hours, denial of religious rights, limited access to showers and working toilets. A Cuban musician, Leamzi La Figura, in a phone call, says there's no water. They only brought a meal once a day. It had maggots. They never take the lights down for 24 hours. This is a quote. The mosquitoes are as big as elephants, he says. Another detainee told the outlet of CBS News that they were treated like rats in an experiment. They're not respecting our human rights, he said. I don't know their motive for doing this, if it's a form of torture. A lot of us have our residency documents, and we don't understand why we're even in here. A third man described how his mental health has deteriorated due to lack of medicine and an impossible situation in which to sleep with this white light on all day and all night. His Bible was also taken away, he said. They took my Bible. They said there is no right to religion here. And my Bible is the one thing that keeps my faith, and now I'm losing my faith.
They don't care. That Trump even said that when asked about the conditions there, whether it's cruel. They said that's not their concern. They don't care about that. They actually like it.
Well, it's again worth noting that I understand these are Cuban immigrants, they're Guatemalan immigrants, they're Mexican immigrants. Seems like there are a lot of Latinos involved here. They're Iranian immigrants. It really cuts across multiple ethnicities, although I would suggest there's a certain concentration ethnically. I think it's clear. But all of that said, the supercharging of ICE and the supercharging of a police state that can pick you up and put you in these places while you await some kind of court proceeding, while you await due process. This is not America. It's really not. And I, again, underscore it. It's happening to all those people and ethnicities I mentioned, but it's going to change. It's going to morph. You should be concerned about the fact that these agents who spirit away people who are here legally, as that one person in detention noted, I have legal papers. I'm waiting to show them to someone. How did I end up here? That could happen to any of us. It seems incredible. I know we live in our homes. We, shop at Whole Foods. I mean, you're not going to, but this is a contemporary concern, especially when you see in the budget, the one thing they have truly supercharged is ICE and the DHS. So,
John Antal disagrees with you. He says it's a lie that ICE is not a corrupt organization.
Well, we've already seen the corruption on display, John. We've already seen them pick up. Now, are you suggesting that they're just inadvertently picking all these people up who they've mistakenly put into detention? So there's just one mistake after another? I'd suggest that there are different kinds of corruption. There's the corruption of incompetence, right? My system has been corrupted because of all the incompetence. It's not corruption like, I'm going to give you this money and now you're going to do something bad. That's a different kind of corruption. And by the way, that corruption exists also because they're bounty hunters that are being offered money for bringing in detainees. That is a corruption of the system. These aren't federales. These aren't ICE agents. These are bounty hunters. So I'd say to you, John, the system has been corrupted. There is no purity to a system that has no due process. They claim to be Christians, to believe in God. They are hypocrites, says CBD. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's just sort of the state of the state from the White House to the detention house. That's the way things shape up in America right now.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Tammy says, I thought I blocked John already. I don't. So he's John. I'll put John up one more time. He seems to be the provocateur of the day. Mm-hmm. So, Mark, are illegal immigrants allowed to work in the U.S.? Yeah, they are, John. Guess what? It's the same reason you're allowed to drive 70 on 101 or whatever highway you're driving on in the United States of America, because they look the other way. They're not pulling you over. When you hit 75, then they might pull you over. It's selective enforcement. Why is it selective enforcement, John? Do you need me to help you with that, or do you want me to explain it, or do you know what the reason is? Why are immigrants selectively enforced when it comes to deportations? Thoughts? The reason is they're such an incredibly integral part of the American economy. Surely, John, even you know that. You know that the agriculture community depends on that immigrant workforce. Illegal immigrant workforce. There, I said it. Go to a slaughterhouse, John. Find me a U.S. citizen at a goddamn slaughterhouse with the blood and the pain and the screams of those creatures. You find me a U.S. citizen there. F you, John. I'm blocking him. For 5 minutes, I'm blocking him. John, you're on timeout.
Good day, sir.
Exactly. I've had enough of you.
Why are you yelling?
I've had enough. My back's on fire. Been up all night, and I can't have somebody in my face like that.
Sayonara, sucker.
I'm not saying sayonara. You know, I have trouble actually banning people. but I'm blocking him for 5 minutes, Kim. He's being
Okay.
yellow carded.
I blocked him for 5 minutes.
Thank
But
you.
I disagree with him, and I think maybe he has some issues. He said there is no alligator Alcatraz. He may be drinking some weird Kool-Aid. I think that he was respectful in his comments, and so
All right, then unban him. Unban him.
It's too late.
I
The
unban
5
him
minutes
then.
Don't
already
talk to me
begun.
that way.
I
Too late.
unban him.
That was very inappropriate.
I thought it was a bit inappropriate. Thank you, Mr. President.
That's not fake. That's real.
All right. I mean, you can go ahead and unban him. I don't know. It sounds like you make a good argument. You are clearly in league with John, and
no, I'm not. But I do think it's okay to disagree.
well, I need a little Coachella Valley coffee. Excuse me. I'm sure John is a nice man. I say that. I have no idea whether he's a nice man.
I don't know.
I just would encourage him
We
to
have processes and protocols and standards.
Thank you. That's exactly the point I was trying to make. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. When you, John is brainwashed, so can't comprehend anything you're saying, says Lisa Lee. Oh.
I got a box from Coachella Valley Coffee yesterday that I didn't order, but in it came, and in it was a 2-pound bag of Lion's Mane coffee.
Oh, you got the Lion's Mane.
I've never seen anything like it.
Oh, it's really good.
Sent me 3 packages of tea. He knows I love the vanilla, so he sent me that. He sent me a new sun tea, which is hibiscus orange. So I'm going to try that, make that outside. The tea comes in huge packets, and so you can make it outside in a big container.
Sure.
And he sent me a really cool like shopping bag that you would take to the grocery store, but it's made of what looks to be an old burlap coffee sack. It has that look to it, and I love it.
I'm so impressed that he sent you that stuff. That's really, really cool.
I was so excited.
Oh my God.
I know. I'll tell you something. I love this Lion's Mane coffee. It's what I'm drinking right now. It's incredible. And I recommend it. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. You too can have a piece of paradise.
So I had my husband try the Lion's Mane coffee as well. He said it's very good.
Yeah,
very
really
good
is.
coffee.
So check it out. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can't taste that there's mushrooms in it.
Oh, no.
You
It doesn't taste like mushroom at all. In fact, it's got
like really good coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a cool kind of tasting note profile that's on the website. All of their stuff on the website has the tasting notes, and you should look at them, make sure that they kind of vibe with what you want as your vibe in your coffee cup. It's CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, but when you put everything into your cart, remember to use our discount code MARKT at checkout, and you'll get 10% off. So that's definitely something you want to jump on. Again, this Lion's Mane is something that we are just getting hip to. It's a new product from them, and it's all organic, and it's great to put in your body. I need it today. I really need it today. With out of left field, I had a listener viewer come after me. It was rough.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
I can't ignore it for a moment when I'm assailed like that, when I'm attacked like that, when they come after me like that, Albert. I need a Secret Service crew. I need those big guys to walk in. So I want to talk to Katz. Did you send him
I sent him a link last night, and I just sent him another one. So
yeah. David Katz is our most know this. Lion's Mane sounds like a pot variety, says Tammy. It does have kind of an alternative type name, right?
It's supposed to improve your cognitive abilities, and in some cases, I was reading last night, some people say it will stave off Alzheimer's. So I don't know.
Wow, that would be nice.
By the way, while we're waiting for David Katz, can I just give you a little bit of breaking news?
Please.
There is an incident. It's a standoff with ICE, and I mention it because we were just speaking of ICE. Dozens of people at a tomato farm in Southern California are in a standoff with ICE agents right now. It started in the farming community of Camarillo. north of Los Angeles. They don't say what type of operation is underway, but people on the scene say it was an immigration raid, and ICE has now set up a skirmish line, and now there's this standoff at this tomato farm where there's resistance.
And you know something? They love this because this is the theater of ICE that they relish. That's why they went into Los Angeles heavy-handed with the feds on horseback, with so many ICE agents sweeping MacArthur Park, with a Black Hawk helicopter over top. They go for the theater of it. And so this is real. They're trying to, in one of these sweeps, detain these people. But the pushback is exactly what they want. And so on the one hand, I applaud the pushback. On the other hand, it's exactly what the administration wants. But this does go to the heart of where these immigrant communities support the economy, and that's in the fields. You won't have American citizens doing what these people do. That's why you need a Bracero program, and that's even why you heard Donald Trump sort of thinking out loud about the fact, well, we need some kind of program to take care of my farmers. He's aware of it, but he's committed to the alternative. Excuse me. Thursdays, we like to check in on the law. It seems as though the last bastion of support and pushback against the Trump administration, a lot of the things that would be considered lawless, is associated with the courts. And the former federal prosecutor, now working as a defense attorney in Southern California, joins us every Thursday. You can hear him across the English-speaking world. He's one of the top legal analysts in media across the globe. How about it for David Katz, everyone?
Hi, great to be with you, Mark.
Well, we were so worried about getting you on at noon and Pacific time, and here it is a little after. So we'll hop right to it, and you can tell us how much time you have. David, I wonder if you could speak to what happened as we came on the air today, and that is that there was an injunction, and this is, again, one of these nationwide injunctions on this birthright citizenship order from the president. Can you speak to how quickly that injunction both spoke to the problem and also how it's only a 7-day injunction? So maybe that's suggesting a Supreme Court ruling on this?
Well, you know, cases have to be pleaded correctly, especially back in, our history. You read Dickens, Bleak House, that sort of thing. It was very important how cases were pleaded. And now in modern practice and in federal practice, Mark, we've tried to make pleading easier so that the facts and the law can get before the court. And it's not just all a matter of whether the lawyers have artfully pleaded the case or not. And that may be all that was wrong with the case that recently reached the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm not faulting the lawyers. They presented the case to the judge. They thought that would be the way to do it with a nationwide injunction. The Supreme Court just slapped the district judge down in that case. But it might have been just how the lawyers presented the case. Maybe this is the key that will open the legal ruling that birthright citizenship is in the Constitution. It's inviolate. It can't be changed without a constitutional amendment, because maybe the cure was just to do this, was to present in New Hampshire, could have been any other federal court, a request for not a nationwide injunction, but a class action where the class was all the babies born in America. And if the class is all the babies born in America and they're all before that federal court, albeit in New Hampshire, it could have been California, like the case, but that may be the trick that opens the correct ruling. And yes, you're right, that may go, excuse me, to the U.S. Supreme Court promptly. When this case gets on the merits to the U.S. Supreme Court, I put all my Katsadamas predictions on the table, Mark, right here on the table. Birthright citizenship is constitutional. It can't be changed. It's right there. The 14th Amendment, passed right after the Civil War, says anyone born in the United States. It has a tiny exception, which is for diplomats, kids born in the United States from other countries, has no relevance to any of this. There's a Supreme Court precedent decided about 100 years ago that involved a person born of Chinese parents who were not lawfully in the United States. But the mere fact that he was here, born, it didn't make any difference whether his parents were lawful residents or not. That's obviously precedent for what's going on right now. All these babies born in the United States are going to be citizens. It's guaranteed by the Constitution. And the 7 days, Mark, It's just that the administration will no doubt want to appeal this. That'll be to the First Circuit up there in New England. I don't believe that they're going to overturn the judge within 7 days, and then they'll have to run to the U.S. Supreme Court, the administration, and we may have a ruling quite promptly. Maybe this was the key, the pleading key that opens the door to the ruling on the Constitution.
Yeah, you've been consistent on this, saying that you feel as though this will be.
I can read.
Yeah, you're saying it's in clear language in the Constitution. So the big ruling about the Supreme Court clearing the way for these mass firings, I think that is something that maybe you wouldn't have predicted in such an overwhelming way. I think there was only, of the liberal judges, only one dissented. In other words, the Supreme Court has said, hey, you, Donald Trump, you can legally proceed with the restructuring of government, which involves firing thousands of workers.
Well, I wasn't actually asked on this particular one, as I recall, and now now that I see what the U.S. Supreme Court has done, we predict.
No, I wasn't suggesting it was a Katz official prediction, but I just thought you might be surprised.
Imitators, or not Nostradamus imitators, we prognosticators, we're very sensitive about these things. Mark, the case is really fascinating, and the news is bad. The news is bad because the district judge had said that she thought that I think it's a she. Anyway, the district judge said that it looked like the plaintiffs would win on the merits. And that's what the Ninth Circuit out here on the West Coast said. Only 2-1, but that's what they said. Now the U.S. Supreme Court just said, at least the 6 of them, that they believe that the Trump will win on the merits. The merits of this case is how much the executive branch, Mark, can restructure the federal bureaucracy without Congress weighing in. I believe that what the district judge did and what the Ninth Circuit affirmed, and that has now been overruled, was correct. I believe that when Congress sets up these huge agencies and structures them and funds them, that there is an expectation that they cannot be massively undone by the executive because Congress sets up and spends the money. So I just think that they're way wrong on this, but I think they're wrong on other things, and they're the U.S. Supreme Court. At the end, it's not because they're right. It's because there are 5 of them. That's really all it is.
That's a great line. I don't know if that is taken from some text, but it's a great way to put it, particularly these days. But
a lot of it's derivative, Mark. A lot of it's derivative. But if you steal from one person, it's plagiarism. If you steal from many, it's good research.
I love the line. It's not because it's right. It's because there are 5 of them. So let me just speak though to the minority, and then I'll move on. We have a lot to get to. But the minority opinions, because you expect that the liberal justices might line up against the executive's ability to do what you're talking about, which is to dismantle and get rid of a bunch of the staffers of these federal agencies. That the liberal justices, traditionally thought of as liberal justices, right? That they sided with the conservatives except for one.
Well, let's say you're dealing with the State Department, and the State Department's going to have apparently 1,800 or 1,900 people affected by this decision. Okay. Where do you draw the line? It may be that some small office can have half of its staff fired because that's a presidential priority. But it seems like an entire office couldn't be disbanded. If the entire office is set up by the Congress, the idea that you can completely emasculate that office, that you can remove a whole bunch of people. So 5 or 10 or reassignments, there should be something. Obviously, the president doesn't have to get Congress's approval when they get rid of 2 or 3 people. But where is the line? And I thought that the line was not where the U.S. Supreme Court seems to have drawn it by saying that they believe that the president will win on the merits. Now, you might wonder, how do they know that without having a trial? But they're so smart. They have all these law clerks, the justices do, and they take a look at it. They take a look at it just right now on this record based on the pleadings. And they say that they think that the president is going to win on this, that he can largely restructure. Now, here's the reason that the 2 of the usual 3 didn't join Jackson. Because the executive order that does this, Mark, it says that it has to all be done according to law. And so since it says according to law, like Sotomayor says, it'll go back to the same judge who decided it in the first place. And that judge will make sure everything is done according to law. But it's a little bit of, whistling by the graveyard because, again, the merits, the 6 of them said, are that the president, they think, will win on the merits. Now, they can decide right now that they think that the administration will win on the merits. And then once the record is more developed, once the U.S. Supreme Court actually sees it, let's say 6 or 8 months from now, they may decide that on the overall question, they don't win on the merits. Now, I'm not minimizing how important this is, Mark, because hundreds of thousands of people have already, the probationary employees were pretty much let go. And the reality is they're going to get other jobs. The probationary employees are probably never going to come back. The probationary employees, some of them were already supervisors. In the time of the probation period, a year or two, they'd shown how much worth and value they had. They were going to be kept. They were actually supervisors by then, and they were knocked out as probationary. There are other people who just said, I can see the writing on the wall. They probably saw the writing on the wall from the time that Trump polled higher than Kamala Harris. But there's a lot of people who've been getting out of the administration because they've got other jobs. They're very desirable. They've gone to the state government to do similar functions they used to do for the federal government. So there's a couple of 100,000 people who've already left federal government service on account of this was brewing. But what's going to actually happen agency by agency, and this affects about 15 or 16 different federal agencies. And I'm jumping around a bit, but the effect of this, since the injunction was issued in May, was tremendous. If you're looking at it from the point of view of the administration, this original injunction didn't even allow them to plan, Mark, to reorganize these agencies. So the administration was totally on hold. And, if these orders had kept the administration on hold for 3.5 more years, that would have probably solved the whole problem from my point of view. And from the U.S. Supreme Court's point of view, the 6 of them, it was like, no, this is not staying on hold for a couple of years, because this judge had said that she was, I think it's the judge had said that it seems so likely that the Congress was not consulted properly and that Trump would lose, that all of the planning, all of the everything was stayed. So while the case got tried and litigated, that could have been a year, Mark, right? And for a year, Trump and his administration couldn't even put in their plans for these reorganizations at 15 or 16. And that's what got the 6 of them riled up enough to take this case on what they call the shadow docket. And they didn't just say we're sending it back for a new injunction. They said, and this is what's important, even in the terse little shadow docket ruling, Mark, they said, we think that Trump will win this one on the merits. So last thing I want to say is that as you go through all of those 16 agencies or so that are affected by it, every single one, there may be civil service protections. So the first time they actually reorganize, they actually fire somebody, tell somebody they're going to be fired. And it may be that they can do it now within 30 days. The normal rule was within 60 days. But as soon as the person gets the termination notice, this is the guy who doesn't want to leave federal service and do some other job or take their early retirement. This is the guy who wants to stay. That guy has a union. That guy has civil service protections. That guy will come in and challenge the order, and agency by agency, challenge by challenge, all of that will happen. So this is why Sotomayor and Kagan said they can't scream that the theater's on fire every time it happens, which you sort of want to do, say the theater's on fire every time these 6 are doing something on the Supreme Court. I think the 2 of them said, you know what? This one can be ameliorated because as you go through it, person by person, they'll have their own challenges, agency by agency. And Jackson said, this is an abomination. This is unbelievable. You guys are just rolling over for Trump. And that's what she said now a couple of times now, that this is not law. This is just you're eager. She said the 6 justices, you're eager to green light this president. That's where she got the rebuke about a week or 2 ago from Amy Coney Barrett. And obviously, Chief Justice Roberts, he's no fool. Chief Justice Roberts, you think, as well as knowing a lot of law, you wonder why the most important case of the term, probably last term, he gave it. He didn't keep it himself since he was in the majority, why he gave it to Barrett. And it seems like the reason was, I think, I'm speculating, that because Jackson is a young female Democratic appointed justice, he was going to have the young female Republican appointed justice, right? Duke it out with her, Duchess it out with her.
Is, by the way, ameliorate is a ding word. The question comes, though, just help me, when you look at this process that you just described, you're saying that the power that those individuals who are going to be dismissed or in line for dismissal or however they do it with a forced buyout, et cetera, they will challenge, it's understood, those dismissals in various courts around the country, and that will be allowed to play out? Are you saying that
Yes.
was okay? I just want to be clear on that. So
Well,
they're
their
saying
union-
the apparatus is there for the challenge, is their point. They don't need to block the president's ability to restructure.
But it's important to understand what the district judge had done while the litigation was pending, and that could have gone on for, let's say, a year. A stay was in effect, which meant thousands and thousands of people couldn't be fired.
Sure.
Their agencies couldn't be restructured. Trump couldn't even put in plans. That was in violation of the order because, after all, Congress needed to be consulted, the district judge said, and Congress wasn't being consulted. Now, you might wonder, with a bunch that passed the big, beautiful bill, why isn't Congress being consulted? But this probably is something that couldn't go through what's called reconciliation mark. So it couldn't have been done by the barest majority. In the Senate, it would have been subject to the filibuster. There are not 60 senators who want to restructure any of these agencies. And the reason I said 15 or 16 agencies, Mark, is that there's some other agencies that were not covered by this order. And they're all of these rulings. Basically, they've gone against Trump. People talking about 95%, Mark, of the cases were decided against Trump. That's the minutia of all of these. There was a ruling, and I don't know, I think there was one at DOJ. Remember, there was another one at Treasury. So there have been all of these things where, like, the Treasury Union has sued, I think, successfully to block restructuring and transfers there. There's all of this stuff that's going on. And so but that's what it certainly was. This was something that certainly got a lot of attention because there are thousands of people who are just saying, if the Supreme Court is ultimately going to rule against me, I'm getting a job with the state government. I'm going into the private sector. I'm getting out of the federal government. We're losing tremendous resources. And here's the last thing I want to say. I've been fighting the federal government for years. I'm the one who says if it's appropriate, that there was government malfeasance here. I'm fighting the IRS that they didn't follow the right procedures according to what the procedures are. But the federal employees are terrific, Mark. They do not sit there all day long, right, and twiddle their thumbs. I mean, they have all kinds of, you look at the IRS, let's take just normal IRS agent. What agency does Trump love to bash more than that? They keep their hours meticulously. I mean, more than at a law firm. They account for everything they do in an 8-hour day.
Well, most of them are making less money than they make in the private sector anyway. I mean, this picture, this cartoonish picture of public servants is really a disservice to the work they do. Yeah,
absolutely.
I want to just ask you quickly because I know our time is limited. There was
I have more time, Mark. I juggled my schedule a little bit.
Okay, thanks. The gun legislation is interesting to me. That there are various in the big beautiful bill legislation. There is legislation within the legislation that's associated with guns, and there was the National Firearms Act that had imposed a $200 tax on manufacturing and transfer of firearms, silencers, and short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns. I'm just reading that has long been upheld. So gun groups with the new administration in charge went right after it, and they now have rolled back a lot of that. And so the gun industry wants to bring this to court and make it permanent, the rollback and if you will, the tax on these things like silencers for weapons. They don't really want any impediments to gun ownership.
I don't know when the Republican Party became the party of gun silencers. I mean, the Republicans were conservative, law and order. Like I said, I was in the Reagan administration. We went after silencers. What is anybody legitimately doing with a silencer? You need to shoot a deer with a silencer? No, it's a crime. It's a gun that's used to commit crimes and to try to get away with it so people won't hear that someone's just been murdered. So I don't get any of this. But the case that interested me more was the case about the click to cancel. Are we going to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the U.S. court has struck down a click to cancel rule that was supposed to make unsubscribing easier. So, when you want to unsubscribe to something, it would have kept businesses from forcing customers through the long process of canceling something. It would be that's why it's called the click to cancel rule. So the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit vacated the Federal Trade Commission's click to cancel rule that would have required companies to allow consumers to cancel subscriptions using the same method they used to sign up. After finding the commission that the commission behind it failed to follow required procedures under the FTC Act during the rulemaking process. They're seeing a legal problem with the way the rule was made.
Well, this was really something that hits home. That, you know, a lot of this stuff seems kind of lofty if you're not a federal employee, if you don't see how your rights are in particular being impinged. A lot of what we talk about is really fascinating, you know, but you may think, how does this really affect me? This one really affects you. It actually affects sort of my life. One of the reasons that I don't go on more things is I figure what a huge hassle it'll be. I don't want to try it for a couple of months because I figure they'll, you know, dragoon me in there and I'll be paying forever. I'll be like those guys with the timeshares you hear about on the radio. How do you get rid of this timeshare? Because you can get into it with a click, but you can't get out of it with a click. You have to go chat with somebody. You have to go figure out 10 different things you have to hit. You have to file something. They make it as difficult as they can. But the law has been, regulations have been, that they don't have to make it easy for you. And there's what they call the negative option mark, which means that if you don't affirmatively say, I want out, they can deem that you want to keep in and you want to keep getting billed. And so without forcing people, forcing companies to have that easy click to cancel, they don't do it. Now, they obviously have done market studies to see the David Katz's that you get to try your product, that would try your product if he knew that it wasn't going to be a huge hassle to get out, are not as lucrative as the people that don't want to be in that you keep in. And these are the cable services. These are insurance contracts. This is big, big business. And the case is absolutely fascinating. So the FTC under Biden has 3 Democratic members and 2 Republican members. That's how these independent agencies roll, and their decisions have been respected and people have played by the rules. And so these 2 Republicans under Biden, the 2 out of the 5, did everything to help big business delay this rule. They filed dissenting opinions. They held it up. And there's all these rule-making procedures, Mark, which sound boring, but this is how things actually get done. When they do the studies that they have to do to figure out the economic impact, they say that, wow, big business could lose over $100 million. They ought to lose over $100 million. These are people who don't want their products. These are people who are being forced to pay for something they no longer want. Anyway, they decide it's going to be over $100 million, Mark. And then a new rule kicks in. You have to do some other kind of a study once it's a $100 million impact case. And allegedly, they didn't do that. So all the big business screamed and yelled that they had to do another study. And they said, no, enough is enough. The timing is fantastic, Mark, because it was November. Trump had just won the election. It was clear that he was going to decimate the FTC, that he was going to probably change it to where it wouldn't be 3-2 Democrats anymore. And if they studied it any longer, once Trump got in office, it would be studied to death and the rule would never be propounded. So they propounded their rule that there was click to cancel. Big business immediately took it to the courts. They took it to a whole bunch of different circuits, Mark, and somebody decides which circuit gets it. How that got done, I don't know in this case. I'm not saying anyone was corrupt. It went to the 8th Circuit. As soon as I saw that it was a 3-0 decision throwing out the click to cancel rule, I said, those are 3 Republicans. These issues have become so, you can guess by the politics. If they're Democratic appointed judges, they're doing something for the consumer. And I hate to say it, anyone can refute me if they want to try to refute me. If you see that it's Republican picked judges, it's almost always for business. So I looked to see who were the 3 appellate judges that threw out this rule, 2 appointed by Trump, 1 appointed by Bush. Okay. And the one who was appointed by Trump, even Senator Flake, a Republican, voted against this Trump judge. And guess who Pence had to push him? Pence, before Trump wanted to hang him, Trump broke the tie, put this Trump judge on the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and 3-0, they just threw out this rule. Welcome to the courts.
The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, trying to modernize consumer protections, and they get the commission gets 70 consumer complaints a day, up from 42 back in 2021. And
well, people are too frustrated to write in,
Yeah.
Mark. You know how many people really would complain if they
Sure.
if it was because this is what they do. They keep you in there when you don't want to be in there. You figure you can't get out. And I subscribe to fewer things, but as I say, the market, Mark, has obviously told them that you can keep more people in there who don't want your product anymore by making it really hard to get out than they would if they were transparent and easy and they made it. I mean, if it's good enough to get in, why shouldn't the clicker two be good enough to get out? But
Sure.
obviously they don't want that. They want you there. They want you in there, and the law now allows them to keep you in there and just keep draining money out of you for a product or service that you no longer want. This is why Democrats should run to help the consumer. If Democrats would run on consumer issues and the economy, it's so popular. It's what working person, what normal person in America, what person who's not a multimillionaire invested in one of these companies wouldn't be on the side of the click to cancel rule.
Ron DeSantis in Florida, the Republican governor there, signing into law a law that makes it a crime to enter Florida after having come into the United States illegally, and then re-entering the state after having been deported. He signed this law, and then there was a court action, the Supreme Court, declining to take up a request from Florida to block this lower court's decision that bars the state from enforcing parts of that new immigration law. So the U.S. District Judge, I guess Kathleen Williams down there, temporarily blocking enforcement of the law. That was in April. And last month, she found Florida Attorney General James Uthmeyer in civil contempt over what she said was an effort to defy her order. I guess they're looking at Florida as kind of the test case for the way they're kind of blowing past court decisions. But I'm wondering what can be done just from a legal standpoint, David Katz, along the lines of what DeSantis is trying to do. He's saying, if you're coming into this country illegally, you cannot come into my state, Florida, and that could be repeated in Texas, in New Mexico, Arizona, and California.
Well, you know, DeSantis wanted to be president, and then he could do all the crazy things with immigration enforcement that Trump is doing. But he didn't end up being president. As Trump said, why have the apprentice when you can have the master? And he ran this vitriolic, emotional, personal campaign against DeSantis, which seemed like Trump's whole point was that he was taller than DeSantis. So the MAGA base wanted the tall master and not the short apprentice. And the rest is history. Well, guess what? As governor of a state, you don't get to set immigration policy. And that's why the U.S. Supreme Court just slapped this one down. And they've been very good on that, the U.S. Supreme Court, even the majority, not letting states set immigration policy. It's left in the Constitution to the federal government. That's a major federal power. And the idea is that you cannot have inconsistent immigration standards where Alabama does one thing and then you go into Tennessee. It's sort of like, Europe was in the old days, almost before they had the common market, that every time you go into a new place, you have new immigration standards. So they slapped that down, and it looks like that will go nowhere, and it probably will not go anywhere in the other states. So whatever the federal government decides to do on immigration, and we see the wide swings between Biden and now Trump, it makes a huge difference who you vote for president, but it doesn't make much difference who you vote for governor in terms of setting immigration policy in a particular state.
Just as an aside, quickly, it seems to me that the flow legally and legislatively and from the executive is clearly toward a kind of federal centricity to everything that really was, I think, not the way the country quacked for a long time, meaning the balance against federal power, central power in Washington, that then was generated from Washington to the rest of the country, that was always balanced by statehood and states' rights in one way or another. It seems that now, in this moment that we're living, the evolution of this country, the centralized federal government is getting tremendous power to overwhelm the states. In immigration, we've seen it, but I think in other ways as well. You, as an attorney who studies this stuff, Is that a fair appraisal of where we're going?
Well, I think it's more the historian in us. And, you know, we had states' rights was another way of saying slavery for a while. And then states' rights was another way of saying Jim Crow.
Segregation.
For a while.
Right.
And so federalism became sort of a dirty word among liberals and progressives because it meant Jim Crow in the South. And when you imposed federal law, like, for instance, this invasion of the Marines and the National Guard, this totally unwarranted, unnecessary invasion that we've just suffered. This is the first time that a president has sent troops into a state over the objections of the state's governor since LBJ did it in, I think, Alabama in the 60s. So, you know, that's certainly, it's all, federalism is all tarnished by that. And there are some important reasons for federalism. You let some of these states do what they want with Medicaid, and they don't pay people anything. I mean, you look at some state like Mississippi, you know, Mark, the standard of living and the failure to pay under Medicaid. Florida is another one. I mean, you basically die down there. You know, there's so little safety net, and so it's very tempting to say we want to have, you know, not states' rights, not really respect federalism. If you mean by respect federalism, that states get to do pretty much whatever they want, but there's some floor. They can't go below, you know, some floor. It's very tempting, but like I said, I've really had it. I think the whole West Coast has just had it with the way that, you know, our federalism's not being respected and how Trump is just trying to really commandeer our agencies and to take over. And I mean, the dramatic thing, and people who don't live here haven't seen on their local TVs, maybe it's been all over the country, is the Bearcats and armored vehicles and mounted police who went into MacArthur Park, very Hispanic area, and all in LA, and did this huge show of force. And you think to yourself, this is like countries that have coups. This is not, how is he sending these federal troops here to do nothing except to say, to be dominant? It's like, you know, the dominant monkey has arrived, and, you know, boom, 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 Bearcats, you know,
it's the farcical theater that is so much of this, but it's backed up by a tremendous flex that's sweeping up Latinos in neighborhoods around Los Angeles, and as we've mentioned, now going to agricultural communities and getting people, workers in the fields. It's it clearly was theater, the incident to which you've referred in MacArthur Park, but it is also part of the supercharging of ICE with all that money that's in this bill that was just passed. And, you know, they're going to follow it up with stuff that's more than theater. But let me just get back to what I was talking about for a second. You're right. They're now toxic brands, federalism and state rights. Those labels, while rightly applied, do have toxicity around their brands for the reason that you pointed out, Jim Crow, et cetera, with states' rights. But the process, what we're seeing, you take those labels out, the federal government putting its thumb down in California. I'm glad that you mentioned the MacArthur Park case, because it feels like California is almost the test case for this administration. But as I was saying before, I think you're going to see more federal troops in more states, in more cities, as a prominent part of Trumpian policy in the months and years ahead.
Well, a lot of it is just the whole braggadocio of Trump. You know, he just said the other day, well, they're going to take over D.C. and they're going to run it so good.
Yeah, so good.
I think it's well.
He speaks so good.
Third grade, yeah. I think in third grade you learned that it's well in that situation.
Yeah. Well, he even said to the Liberian president, "You speak English so good." It was like, wow.
It's truly remarkable.
Yeah, what? Right.
And meanwhile, Biden was the one who had mental problems. Supposedly he had speech issues. Anyway, he can't take over Washington, D.C. Because there's a local rule act. It was passed by Congress. Congress allowed local rule for D.C. Again, he'd have to pass a bill so that he could take over D.C. in any meaningful way.
Well, Congress, the home rule that you're talking about, only because I know it's not because I grew up in Washington, D.C., right. I think, but you can correct me, it provides for them to run their own city, but Congress could intercede at any time if they want.
But again, they don't have intercession. That's one that would have to get past the filibuster. They don't have 60 votes in the Senate. So the reality is home rule which gives home rule to DC on most issues, is not about to change. So yes, could he do some atrocity like Lafayette Park the first time? Could he, beat a bunch of demonstrators over the head? And yes, would his military officials go along with it? With his new Department of Defense, of course they would go along with it. He could walk with his Bible again, but he couldn't take over DC. And when he talks about New York, he doesn't like who the mayor may be, so he's going to take over New York City. That's all ridiculous. None of that's going to happen. He was able to do, I think, more of that in LA and California, just because people who aren't out here they really can't believe how much this state and city are repelled by him. I don't think there's any chance of a Republican winning statewide office in California for at least 50 years. New York's different. They have chances of winning different things in New York. So politically, I don't think that he would put on this kind of show. I don't think we're going to have the Marines marching through Times Square.
But finish your thought. You said the reason he came to California was what?
I think that one of the reasons he came to California was he felt he had nothing to lose, that we could be a symbol for the rest of the country, and that he was not going to lose votes in Missouri or any place else. There's this congressman right now from the Central Valley. He has a Latino name. He's a Republican. He voted for the big, ugly bill. 2/3 of his constituents are on Medi-Cal. I'm going to say that again. The Medicaid program called Medi-Cal in California, 2/3 of his constituents are on it and are going to be hurt. This guy just slit his own political throat. And apparently, he's going to get, 2 years. He'll be out as a congressman. Trump will make him ambassador to God only knows where. That's how that one's going to roll. He obviously voted against the interests of his constituents. But my point is that New York City is a different bag. And can I say one thing about the mayor there? They have this new thing about the mayor, that they don't like the mayoral candidate. And, I like him, Mark, because he went to my high school, Bronx High School of Science.
You're talking about the socialist candidate?
As my brother's
Mandami, as you were talking about, right?
The Muslim Marxist mayor. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? The Muslim Marxist mayor. He's not a Marxist. He wants to freeze the rent. That's, Mayor Adams, who's in there now.
He's a self-described socialist.
That's not doesn't make him a Marxist.
No, I agree. But I just wanted to let let's be fair to.
In terms of their policy differences on running the city,
of course.
Mayor Adams lets stabilized rents go up 3% a year. He wants to freeze the rent to 0%. It's not exactly like you look at how Trump has changed policies. So if you reelect the incumbent mayor, 3% rent raise. This guy wants to freeze the rent, 0% rent raise. It's not exactly, the Bolshevik Revolution.
Well, he wants free transportation, public transport in New York City, and he wants to raise taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers. But
almost all the buses are free, and people don't pay for the bus. It's no big deal.
Yeah, anyway, that continues to be a point of controversy, and Trump has said if he was to win, he would that Trump would take over the city. Hey, will you let me get to this this one thing that involved the dogs, which I really
then I do have to run.
Yeah,
Mark, me to look early. Can you talk about the dogs without me?
I need to run also, David Katz. Okay, do you want? Should we both run? I don't pull. I got to run on me without. I'm somebody also, David Katz.
Do you know who I am?
Yes,
I'm kind of a big deal.
I have big deal
Mark,
things.
You're a huge big deal, and I always ask people to turn on your station, and they always thank me. That's the truth.
Oh, you won really cool.
You won a wonderful program. You just talked about the 8th Circuit decision, about click to that click thing. I don't think there was a better discussion of that. I'm true, I was part of it. But I don't think there was a better discussion of that on the BBC or on NPR or on anywhere, Mark. And you're so interested in the environment and these environmental rulings and how these cases really impact the environment and how we're going the wrong way on global warming and all the other things that matter to people who care about the environment and the planet that we're living in. So I think you do a wonderful show, but I gotta leave, Mark.
We love you. David Katz, thank you. I'm glad that morphed into a compliment. That was a great moment. All right,
well deserved. And you too, Kim. Kim and I go back over 6 years.
Yeah, hey, I know. Kim is great. We're having
take care.
All right, see you soon. David Katz, everybody. Thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Kim Kim skating on her relationship with cats. You know, she's got
Well,
this
you know.
great history with cats.
That's right.
Yeah. So
That's my guy.
yeah,
You know.
apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to mention one thing, one little coda to it all. The legal, something that it's the legal machinations around the American Kennel Club. And this is something that you may not realize, one may not realize, and that is that the breeding associated with the dogs that are elevated in some way by the American Kennel Club, that breeding has been controversial for a long time. And PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, filed a state lawsuit in New York against the American Kennel Club. They're trying to force the American Kennel Club to ditch the breeding standards for canines. This is what I'm talking about when I say they elevate certain characteristics of breeds. They have French bulldogs, pugs, dachshunds, the Chinese Shar Pei. They're saying that the particular way in which they point to certain physical characteristics creates standards of breeding that cause deformities, great suffering, and even premature death to many of these animals. The American Kennel Club says they didn't create breed standards, that instead they work to ensure classifications that are clear, consistent, and continue to reflect the breed's health, function, and type. They're saying, hey, we point to these things because we feel like those are the best parts of a dog. But PETA is saying that French bulldogs, pugs, the upturned flat noses, these unique features, the short-legged, elongated bodies of dachshunds, the unique skin folds of the Shar Pei, they are celebrated by this American Kennel Club, but they're actually really bad for the animals. And they go into a lot of detail. The bulldog's large skull, short-faced head are distortions of the normal structures of that face, mouth, and airway, they say. All of this contributes to the obstruction of airflow and severely impedes breathing. And by the way, people who have French bulldogs, people who have bulldogs generally, know that that is an issue, that the breathing of these animals gets worse as they get older. And same is true to when you look at the Shar Pei, they're saying, and that the skin folds are highly prone to infection and inflammation, and lifelong discomfort and irritation can really be something that afflicts that breed. So they're actually bringing this to court in New York, and we'll watch it for you. But it's a case against the American Kennel Club, and I wanted to bring it forward because there may be some legitimacy to what PETA says, and it's one of those unusual cases, so we wanted to bring it to your attention and to the attention of Katz as well, even as he had to go.
So I wonder what happens with that if PETA successfully sues that dog breeders are no longer allowed to breed for these characteristics that make animals unhealthy. Does that then apply throughout the country? Do dog breeders have to immediately cease and desist breeding for these types of characteristics?
I suspect that what would actually happen would be that these breeding standards are eliminated from any official literature, but that probably as a practical matter, they would still breed for them. Just to be honest, I think that's what probably would happen. But at least these breeding standards that are pointed out during, the Westminster Dog Show, for example, and a lot of these different competitions, they might be eliminated in some way, or at least get a stink on them. This is a process. Really, in animal rights, you notice, and in animal rights being like the umbrella for a lot of these things that are associated with animal activism, you really have to be okay with incrementalism. You really do, because it's very hard to get sweeping laws against, something like bullfighting. What you end up with is, I just picked bullfighting because so many people really aren't cool with bullfighting. But what you find is that in countries, even countries where bullfighting has historically been a big deal and a big part of tradition. You create enough stink around it. You create enough of a societal revulsion to it, or at least questioning of it, that incrementally it goes to this place that is ultimately going to end bullfighting. And that's what's happened. Bullfighting has ended in a lot of places where it was celebrated at one time. So I think you have to be good with the incrementalism, and I think that's what they're going for here.
Can I bring up another animal-related story since we're on this topic? It is this lawsuit where the Trump administration is suing the state of California. They say that animal cruelty laws are causing egg prices to be high.
I saw this. This is absolutely insanity.
Isn't this wild? They say that we have too many animal cruelty laws in California, and they're contributing to the high cost of egg prices, and that our laws in California are actually superseded by federal law regulating egg quality, so that the egg farmers in California, and I live in a big egg producing area, Petaluma, the egg basket of the world, they say that we're just too nice, apparently. And because we're so nice, it makes things cost more.
These are two initiatives that were passed in 2008 and 2018. And all they did to these horribly treated chickens, that chickens are treated more horribly maybe than any other creature. And egg-laying chickens, there is a level of horror there that I don't even want to speak to because it's that bad. I can mention it in kind of a polite way in a second. But all these mandates did in 2008 and 2018, all it did was increase the amount of space that a chicken has. So it's increased by some incredibly small amount. But it did mean that the enclosures had to be slightly bigger. Okay. And there are all kinds of ways around it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are all sorts of ways in which it really didn't do much. But it made it slightly more humane, this inhuman thing that we do to these creatures. It's absurd, of course, that that's the reason for the cost of eggs going up. It's absolutely absurd. You had a bird flu virus that required the destruction, the killing of billions of these animals. So, for starters, you've lost the production line to bird flu. That's the real reason that egg prices continue to be elevated. It's supply and demand. It's a typical blame the Californians, blame those animal rights people, whatever it was. Californians voted for this because Californians, and I think people generally have great hearts. When you actually tell them what's going on, they go, I'm not cool with that, man. Can we do something for those poor creatures? And so that's how that legislation was born. In the egg production world, male chicks are worthless, right, Kim?
Yeah.
You know this.
Mm-hmm.
So male chicks, what happens to them? They're killed immediately.
Yeah.
And they throw them in the dumpster. They suffocate in these huge dumpsters. That's what happens to male chicks. Look it up. Google it. I'm not making this stuff up. So in the sexting, there's a whole part of the egg industry that's associated with sexting. They're looking for female egg-producing chicks. Male chicks are worthless to them. They go into something called a macerator. You know what a macerator is? It's a grinder.
Yeah.
Literally, the live little chick goes into a grinding machine. So the egg business is an ugly business. Also, I know eggs are delicious and a part of, great part of things. And they're also, I would say, in a way, these wild chickens who lay eggs, that's the most humane way to get something out of an animal that you could consume imaginable, right? You don't have to shear it. You don't have to force it. You just pick up that egg that it left behind. So in a way, it has that appeal also. All the people who have their own chickens and their own eggs and stuff. Yeah. But the realities on egg production, on chicken production, they can be pretty ugly. So
even if you don't care about whether a chicken can stretch its legs and wings, even if you don't care about that, there are other reasons to keep them in larger areas as well, because apparently they larger areas or keeping them in the smaller areas increases the risk of food safety threats like salmonella and E. coli.
Of course.
So it's like there are many reasons that you want to maybe give them a little more space so they're not on top of each other,
It's
right?
the same reason you want to give all these creatures some space, because you increase the possibility of disease with less space. Because these are creatures that actually in the wild, in evolution, they are designed to roam openly, right? They're quite fastidious. They take care of themselves. They clean themselves. They're not used to having to step into in their own feces and wallow in their own excrement. So look, with that, Albert, how dare you get me into this? This is just
The Mark Thompson Show.
my God, please. Good morning from Danville, California. If Kristi Noem's response to the Texas flood is an indication, California may as well not even bother to ask for help, says Donald, the gloomy Maine Coon. Yeah, it could be pretty gloomy. You might have the right attitude. Spencer Jaffe with a super sticker for $3. Come on.
Hey.
Thanks for jumping on
Big
and
shout
throwing
out.
something in. Mark, I'll have you know, says Dave with a $5 super chat, that Albert tweeted 15 minutes before the show starting today. Give that man a raise, or at least the rod of equity and mercy. Yeah,
Nice, Albert.
I was impressed that when I asked Albert, have you tweeted and have you posted on social? He did. Yeah. He had already done it. Very impressive, Albert. Albert, thank you.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah. I think you've already received the rod of equity and mercy, haven't you?
Yeah, I'd rather the Sharks get the Stanley Cup, but I don't know if Mark could achieve that for me.
Good morning, Mark and Kim, says Chaplain Fred with a $50 super chat. Wow. I know. I guess my prayer worked on you. You sound and look better.
It's true.
Regarding Trump, with the president of Libya, I think it
Liberia.
was Liberia, but yeah, I think we know what he meant. Speaking English and looking like an idiot, Trump be like, are you not entertained? Lord, please help us. It was a wild, wild exchange. It really was a wild exchange. But as I tried to throw Trump a bone by talking about the fact that I don't know if anybody would know what the actual official language of Liberia is. I mean, just the average person on the street, if you'd stop me, I don't know that I could have told you. So, but as Kim pointed out, yeah, but we're not president of the United States with a whole flank of people who can tell us, hey, here's the situation with these people that you're going to be meeting with, and here's their the information about their country. Luis says, I can't read that. Governor Ass Butts football analogy when people are dead was discussing. You should. What is that, Kim? You
Okay,
should play
so
it.
this is the governor of Texas, and he was asked by reporters, who's to blame for this dismal response to the flooding in Texas, and he says something like, and I'm this is from memory, so he says something like, well, it's losers are the people that ask about blame. Look at football. We all love football. He said, when you lose a game, you don't blame the other team. So he turns the death and the horrible response, the failure, I would say, to respond adequately to people who are dying and needing you. He turns it into a football analogy and says that we are losers for even asking the question.
Yeah. When you're to blame, you definitely don't want to discuss who is to blame. So you'll take all the football analogies and sports analogies you can manage to avoid talking about it. Sausalito Steve, what up, Sausalito Steve? He is an OG of this show, and he sends us a super chat for $20. Thank you, my friend. And he
Big
says,
shout out.
"Keep kicking ass, Mark and Kim."
Yeah,
wow.
That's right. Thank you.
I love it. Yeah, love a little kicking ass. You know what I mean?
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah, that's positive. I'm confused, says Louise. Is the Jewish space laser the same as the weather controlling machine, the thing that produced the flooding in Texas? Would you have Dr. Marjorie Taylor Greene on the show to clarify? Yeah, thank you, Louise. We do need to get a real scientist like Marjorie Taylor Greene on. This to our troll. Surf and Tumbleweed with a $7 super chat says, John, buddy, you won't win this. Mark, you're the best. So worth it. Well, there you go. Thank you. Citizen Morgan with a $5 super chat says, I can only afford the instant coffee because I'm giving to the Mark Thompson show. Oh, my God.
What?
That is
Thompson, party of four.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Wes Theory with a $5 super sticker. Thank you, Wes, OG of the show. Appreciate that. Spencer Jaffe, David Katz is a genius with a $5 super chat. I couldn't agree more. He is a genius. Wes says, I have 2 chickens. They have free reign of my yard most of the time and make me more eggs than I could use. Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with that. Pretty great. Pietro, it's been a while since we've heard from Pietro. A $20 super chat. With all the horrific news, one thing to look forward to, Spaceballs 2 is in production. Yes, the 99-year-old Mel Brooks ain't done yet, says Pietro. Love to all keep pushing. Shout out to Pietro.
Big shout out.
Thank you, my friend. CC Ryder says, Mark, it looks like your show has added 25,000 new subscribers since January. Does that sound right, or is my math wrong? I don't know. I haven't tracked it like month to month, but we're at 125, I think, which is really cool. And share it. Thank you, CC, for that. Share our show. Share videos that you think are good. Share the David Katz thing if you think that is good. Share
subscribe.
Share the shorts. If you share that on social, it costs you nothing and it helps kind of build a footprint. Otherwise, we depend on the YouTube algorithm to serve us to various people who don't even know we're here. So, and MT, is it MBA Ware says, I've needed the MT rant for a while. Let it rip, Marco. Yeah, let it rip. Letting it rip.
This is a man with anger. This is a man that has resentment towards you.
I did get a little agitated with one of our.
I love it when you're angry.
Well, one of our people today.
Sometimes, as a mom, I'll just tell you, the timeout is more for you than for the other person. So I think that's what happened here. You just needed a break from him.
Wow. Very, very interesting. I love it when Kim speaks as a mom. Yeah, she really knows a lot about a lot.
I blame you.
I try to be, supportive of Kim.
Kim, how are you?
She makes it tough sometimes, I'll be honest with you, but I think
do I need to put you in timeout? I do. I need a Mark
She tries to be supportive of me, and I make it tough sometimes. So I know it works back and forth. It's a real relationship,
Yeah, it is.
Albert, of course, is all sweetness and niceness.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, he is
the best. He's the best of all of us.
Yeah, it's it comes with being asked to do less. I could stay all day and feel as though I already have. Timeouts can help you cool back down, says Roger. I guess as long as they're not too long. Kim is more harsh on Mark than on the bully trolls sometimes. Ooh, isn't that right? Yeah.
Wow.
Albert, make Kim's "Do I Need to Put You in a Timeout" a drop. Oh yeah, that is. We've had a couple of drop suggestions. There was another one with Trump, and I forget what it was now. Anyway, all right, everyone. We're going to call this meeting adjourned, but it will be called to order over at the After Party Live channel, so check that out. And until tomorrow,
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
What is that, Kim? Did you have something
I'm only 20 subscribers away from 2,500. Yeah.
All right. Good luck with it. Till tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.